All right. So what we've talked about, we have talked about Great Britain, old Tories, new Tories, or young Tories. We talked about France, and we're on the verge of another revolution, and we're seeing some differences. Now, Russia, there's going to be a hope for a revolution, but that's going to lead to oppression. And the painting behind this is about the oppression. We'll talk more about that. But again, Russia, we're going to find out that Russia is going to become the most reactionary state by 1830, much more conservative than even Austria. So what do we see here? Tsar Alexander the First. Here's a painting of him during the Napoleonic revolutions and the wars. And I want to point out during the alliance with Napoleon, this Tsar Alexander the First actually undertook some reforms. He allowed for some limited freedom of the press. He allowed for some other civil liberties, and he did this in hopes to create a sense of stability so that the French Revolution ideals wouldn't rock Russia. But almost immediately after the outcome of the Napoleonic Wars, the collapse of the French revolutionary promises, Alexander the First really becomes a reactionary. All of his early reforms that he embraced really rejects, and he's really about consolidating and stabilizing power. And in the mix of all this, all of a sudden, a group of secret societies began to form. And the secret societies, because they had to be secret, because they realized that Alexander the First was opposed to any outward. There's no political parties. There's no freedom of press any longer. So secret societies began to form to talk about progress and what they do. The most prominent or important secret society is the Northern Union. The Northern Union were made up of us. It was a liberal-minded nobles and military officers that desired constitutional monarchy. These military officers, they were the ones that actually marched all the way into Paris during the Napoleonic Wars, and the military officers began to realize that as they're looking at all the cool things in Paris and Berlin, they begin to realize and say, wait a minute, as we march forward, we're seeing progress. Russia's so backwards. And they begin to ponder, what was it that made Russia so backwards? They decided that a constitutional monarchy could be the tool, but also they had to abolish serfdom. This was a key. If you abolish serfdom, Russia would be able to progress. Ending serfdom would inspire urbanization. Urbanization would inspire industrialization, so there would be upward progress. So the Northern Union, they were waiting for an opportunity to challenge the czardom, the czar rule of Alexander the First. Well, this occurs during December 1825. We're going to call it the December's Revolt. This is a good painting of what's happening. Um, Alexander the First died in December 1825, and there was confusion on who would rule. His oldest son, Constantine, feared his younger brother, and he's like, I'm out. He secretly quit. Um, that's what that word abdicated means. But he doesn't really tell anybody. So there's actually several weeks in which there's no czar of Russia. Remember, this is an autocracy or an absolute government. You need a czar for it to rule. And there's a moment in which there's no ruler. This is when the military leaders of the Northern Union seized Moscow and St. Petersburg. That should say St. Petersburg. And they called for a constitutional monarchy. They believed that they had leverage as they dominated St. Petersburg and even later Moscow. They were hoping that they would be able to negotiate with the new czar, if it would be Constantine or Nicholas I. Unfortunately for the Decembrists, it's called the Decembrists because these Decembrists are the military leaders who led this December coup. Unfortunately for the Decembrists, the revolt's going to get crushed as Nicholas I, the new czar, mobilized his military and destroyed the revolt. And when he destroys the revolt, he becomes the most reactionary czar. The Decembrists are publicly executed, and or sent to Siberia. And Nicholas I now is fearing. His number one fear is rebellion. So he's going to undergo several policies that's going to make Russia the most reactionary state in Europe. For example, he establishes the third section. The third section is the secret police that he's going to use to ferret out the secret societies. Members of the Northern Union that weren't identified would eventually be identified. And once the secret police, the third section, identified them, they would be sent to Siberia and or executed. He instituted something called official nationality. This becomes the official policy of Russia. The cool words: orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationalism. These would be the three words that would bind Russia together. Orthodoxy, the Orthodox Christian religion of Russia. What if you're Catholic? No, stupid, you're Orthodox. What if you're Muslim? No, stupid, you are Orthodox. Because Orthodoxy was the only religion allowed. All of the concept of religious toleration of Catherine the Great, followed by Alexander I, eradicated Orthodoxy. Autocracy, it's going to be the new cool hip word for Russian absolutism. The autocrat. I want a republic. No, stupid, you're an autocracy. They fully embrace anybody who challenges the autocratic rule of Nicholas I will be sent to Siberia. Nationalism. This nationalism is Russian nationalism. Everyone within the Russian Empire has to identify as Russia. So, what happens if you're Polish? No, stupid, you're Russian. What happens if you're Armenian? No, stupid, you are Russian. It's this idea, orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationalism. It's erasing the idea that anyone is outside of the Russian norm. And what we see here, this is really reactionary. And because by the time we get to 1830, he has crushed any hope of rebellion. There is no liberalism, and he's going to be able to use Russian resources to become what he will call the policeman of Europe. He will be the agent of conservatism. In the face of any revolution, he is willing to go in and hurt it. We will see this later in the revolutions of 1848. Russian forces would be used in Austria to crush those revolutions. So what we begin to see here as we conclude Russia, despite a glimmer of hope in 1825, Russia shifted into the most reactionary state, much more reactionary than even Austria. The continued policy of autocracy and serfdom diminished any hope of reform and progress. As Britain and the rest of Western Europe began to modernize, Russia remains a feudal medieval czardom. So Russia, in some ways, becomes the new Poland, if you will. This archaic photograph of yesteryear, reactionary, no progress. And really the only way there really any real progress was going to happen is because through revolution. And we're going to see that later. But again, we're going to see how that plays out. I hope that makes sense. This is the third and last of the lectures on this. I hope that makes sense, and have a great day.